positive, like great.
Oh, yeah.
We
Yeah.
read it. We're all set. Da, 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 da.
Yeah.
Mama. Okay. Good night. Good night.
All right. So we won't even know if in fact something is slated for demolition unless the Friday before you see the demolition permit pulled, and a fence goes up,
Yeah.
And then, so that's the saga because, I'm not seeing them show up on the agenda. So the historic commission agenda, so this is more than likely.
Raina, in the packet sent to the staff or in the public, it says those were approved administratively.
Right, but unfortunately the meeting.
It's not on
minutes
the
is where
agenda, I agree, but it's in the packet. So that when you get to details about this house that is up for demolition, you get this one. And then at the end, you get all of these were approved.
Okay, so there's a little bit of a switcheroony right now because it normally appeared in the meeting minutes. So now you're saying that it's showing up in the full packet. But what's also happening now, well, the packet now is not even being issued. Like what I'm seeing is when you go to the agenda, it clicks you to be able to go into the app to see the application for each individual property. So Jane, I will check on that, but more than likely what's happening on your screen is that they're getting administratively approved. So we can't even show up at historic because they don't even make it to the agenda.
Wow. Okay. Thank you very much.
That's what I'm speculating, unfortunately.
What street are you on, Jane?
I'm on Glastonbury and it's not happening on my street. It's happening all around Glastonbury.
Yeah.
Our lots are too small for them to be bothered with. They're under 10,000 square feet. So but I would say probably 25 houses in my direct neighborhood have come down in the last 5 years.
Has the hospital been buying stuff there?
No, I don't know who's buying it. That's, it's developers. It's not individual people from what I can gather. Because a for sale sign goes up after the house has been turned into, a ranch house has been turned into a $3 million home.
Great. Yeah, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah, right. But the other thing I'll do, Jane, is send you the revised demolition delay ordinance.
Thank you.
So that you can then have, just a sense of how it was shifted. The final version of it. So you understand that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So why don't we go into the first item? It's our discussion. Let me share my screen. Okay, can everybody see the presentation? Is it up yet?
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, so, and Bill is here as well. I saw him earlier.
Andrea's here too.
Oh, good. Okay. All right, so let me just go ahead through this PowerPoint so you guys can, ooh, good. All right, well, what happened there? Okay. All right, so we all know that the strong block is individually listed. This is just a update from where we were last in terms of the landmarking process. So then it automatically qualifies for its eligibility for nomination. So it's then nominated, and Bill, along with
John Rice,
and I don't know if Andrea and Deb were on this.
They're all listed on all of them.
Great. All right. So it has been nominated. So now we're at the stage where the Newton Historic Commission will make a determination, and then with an initial determination, decide whether or not they want to accept the nomination for the landmark consideration for the strong block. And we know now that that meeting is scheduled for the 23rd of March. Okay. So once something is nominated, as I just said, the Historic Commission makes an initial determination that the property may meet one or more of the following criteria. That the property significantly represents an architectural type, style, design, distinguished by innovation, rarity, uniqueness, and overall quality of design, detailing materials, and or craftsmanship. So all of these criteria, in my mind, I believe that the strong block, meets this criteria, but it's the NHC that will make this determination. Okay, it's meaningfully associated with a person or persons who significantly contributed to the cultural, historical, architectural, or archaeological aspect of the development of the city of Newton. And then it's a notable work of an architect, and in this case, it's Louis Bacon. And its work and his work was significant in the history and or the development of the city of Newton, and I would suggest the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So, and the other thing I think that needs to be known about Louis Bacon is that he is responsible for 4 buildings in Waban. The other one was the Engine 6. He was the architect on that. And then his own home, there are 2 properties on Chestnut, his original home and then the Bacon house that's on the other side, were all designed by him. And then what happens after if in fact the Newton Historic Commission accepts the nomination, it will then go into a status of the NHC calling a public hearing prior to the vote as to whether or not it's designated as a landmark. So there's a preliminary public hearing where the public speaks, which will happen after the 23rd, and then they will have another meeting where they will vote. Okay. So what is our role as the area council? It's known that we are to advise all of the city's departments, agencies, boards, and commissions of the city. But we're also to make them apprise them and to make them aware of what the reactions and attitudes are of the Waban, for us, it's the area voting members of the Wabanites, of impending issues, neighborhood issues, or actions. So in my mind, when I read that in our board order, it means that we need to go out into the community and find out, how Waban residents feel about the landmarking of the strong block. So, I want us to be in that position. And in my mind, that is either a petitioning the community or, some sort of letting people know that in fact, that the strong block, because many people don't know that the strong block is up for consideration for landmarking. Okay. Oh, and I wanted to show everybody this picture. This is Louis Bacon, and he actually was an alderman in the city, and he actually is considered, way back when as, the father of Waban. But here he is right here, and he's buried in Newton Cemetery.
Huh.
Yeah, but that's there's a whole other story about all of the architects of Waban it's really incredible, but we have many significant architects that lived in Waban at the, just as Waban was forming. And, I know of, 6 significant architects that lived in Waban. So, we have very quality of build within our, in the older buildings, right around Chestnut and Woodward. They're very significant buildings. Okay.
You just called him the father of Waban, and I've sort of come to look at William Strong.
Right.
William
Right.
Strong is sort of the parents of Waban, because he really helped usher that in. So I know he was instrumental in the architecture. I'm not even sure if he didn't have a handle in the Strong building, but or a hand in it. So what do you mean by that? That Bacon was?
Wait, what do you say? A hand in the building? What do you mean?
I think so. I remember seeing some documentation that Louis Bacon had some kind of either was the actual architect for
Oh,
the
he was.
building?
He was. Yeah.
Oh,
No,
okay.
he was the architect.
so- so-
I was confused here because I was thinking you were
So,
thinking William Strong.
The other, he's
No,
kind of
no.
like the other parent, I
Yeah,
guess.
no. But he actually was he was, part of the WIS. And he did, just looking at documentation, he has done a huge amount in the beginning days of Waban. He was beyond being an alderman.
I understand, that Waban Hall is not much to look at right now. It's got that extra piece on it and you see barely,
We're only talking about the strong block tonight.
oh, sorry.
Yeah, okay.
Never mind.
Yeah.
Erase that.
I,
Okay.
I think that what I would like to bring up and what I am concerned with is, us going out into the community and soliciting, people's opinions about the landmarking. So that's where I'm jumping to my area counselors in terms of ideas and what we would like to do.
Do we have a reasonable survey that we could send out with just a few questions? And
Oh, yeah, we could survey if we wanted to, but I'm actually thinking that it might be a good idea. Well, I want to hear everybody's ideas.
I would suggest just doing a petition because I have yet to run into anybody who's like, oh, don't landmark the strong building. Maybe a petition be just like a one answer thing. Are you, do you support landmarking the strong building? Boom.
okay, then.
And if people oppose it, they can send us an email or something like that.
Well, there's also the question of, will we be doing this for other buildings in Waban Square? And if so, are we replicating effort? Do we want to have, a 3 or 4 page question? The first one being the strong building. And others perhaps being on pages 2 through 6. If you're going to do a petition.
Well, I think that, going to the doors is probably the most effective way to elicit, people's responses. And I specifically am thinking about the people that, live within this quarter mile, half mile radius. And I think that would be a really sort of effective way of doing it. But, for me, landmarking is citywide, and I think we could actually go further,
Well, at least we could use the Waban list, which is about 1,000 villagers and maybe less, because there's Newtonites, but in general, it's a good Waban section of people. And I think we should just send it to our email list.
And could they send back their signatures and have those count as a petition? Would that be believable?
No, they require wet signatures usually.
Oh, is that true?
Well, let me find out. In this era of, COVID,
Digital.
let me find out.
I would strongly suggest a very short survey. And if it's going to have one question, it should be clear in the title. Otherwise, people are not going to open it. People are tired.
Yeah, just one question. I think that probably get more response.
As Bill, following, and here I go with, not talking about Waban Hall, but they're back to back, in terms of being up at the Historic Commission. So I do appreciate what Sally just said about, if we're going to the doors for X, we should be going to the doors for Y, just because they are so on top of each other. So I think that's actually something that would be good. Bill, do you have anything you want to say?
The two that we've filed that might be worth soliciting opinions on. I don't know if we'd want to get carried away about other buildings just because the strategy that we had worked out was that we would start with these two and then figure out based on how that goes beyond that. So we haven't had any discussions about other buildings yet.
That seems reasonable.
Yeah, okay. All right, so I will be charged with drafting those petition statements, and then letting, and it would be super simple. It would just basically, do you support the landmarking of building X, building Y, and yes or no,
But you should also probably, Raina, it would be good to explain what landmark means.
Well, that's where I have to back up information on the website, because I think that's too much content to bring to the door. So I think it's better for us just to simply make a, take one of our pamphlets and say, please visit the website. We have a full description of landmarking. And I can upload my, my slides, presentations, and I can also do a little descriptor of landmarking.
Well, I would make it as easy as possible for people who open their email. Landmark means that this building cannot be demolished. Do you agree with this? Bang, that's it. Otherwise, it's too complicated. If it's one more step, you have to go to
Okay.
the
All right, so right at this stage of the game, I think what we should do is get you, Isabel, and then maybe Sally and I together. We will draft, maybe a little flyer. And then I will, have it. I could even call a special meeting so that we review it and then just all decide that this is what we want, unless we want to just go ahead and charge us with this task. Is the area council supportive?
I thought
This
we were-
have to be done by the 23rd?
No, I think that's where it gets into, there's a whole process in that the first step is that it is good to let the Newton Historic Commission know that there is support in the community. But it's a multi-step process because, first it's that they take it in, that they accept the nomination and they want to explore it further, and then that process of generating the landmark report for the strong block. And then the public hearing for the people to come in and say, express their opinion on it, and then a vote. So I'm guessing that this process is 4 to 6 months, just out of timeline, because generating that landmark report doesn't happen in a month. It's usually, in the past, it's been 3 to 4 months of work.
Right. And would those public meetings be by Zoom or will they be in person only?
Well, that's another topic, but yes, it expires on the 31st of March. So, and I know that it was passed, an extension was passed by our House, but it's sitting at the Senate right now. So that was, in terms of what we are going to do as an area council. So I think that we're all sort of in a holding pattern right now. But my guess it would be a hybrid, just because I think that this is a good thing. The hybrid format helps many more people get to meetings.
Right.
Yeah.
In general, if there's some sort of change in the law, which is probable, then there would still usually be opportunities for the general public to participate in meetings from home, but there might be more requirements for the actual members of various committees, commissions, area councils, city councils, et cetera, to actually be in person.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Bill.
Okay, I think, are we good with, just letting this sort of subcommittee, Isabel, Sally and I drafting a flyer, and the questions, just a very generalized sort of, do you support the landmarking of the X building and as well as Y building, yay or nay? That simplicity, and then drafting a flyer that is a little bit of an explainer of what landmarking is currently in Newton.
I so move.
Okay.
Seconded.
Second. Okay, so let's do a show of hands. Ooh, that's not me. Who put my little thumbs up? Being hijacked. Who did that? Ooh.
Oh, I like that. That's hilarious.
Okay. Okay.
I'm just going to abstain because I joined late in the middle of the conversation.
Okay, so I'll put you down as abstaining, Sumok. Okay. All right, so why don't we're actually early, thank you, everybody, for our discussion, our next item, which is the.
Somebody needs to filibuster until it's 8 o'clock, right?
I'm not filibustering, but my hand is up and I didn't put it up.
Who's doing this?
I don't know.
Is that somebody can do there? You can just lower her hand.
Oh my God, who's mucking? Who is mucking? Is this
possible?
Oh, I didn't know that.
I just lowered people's hands.
Thank you.
Ooh, that's a good. That's weird.
That's weird. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. All right. So somebody's in the room. Okay.
But
All
go
right,
send the Zoom.
now, all right, so now I'm a little, is Carrie or Christine, are they here? Our presenters? Oh,
Well, why don't we do administrative then, which is usually done at the end, but it'll take up a couple minutes.
well, there, I told her 8 o'clock. But I'm sort of.
Well, we're 5 minutes early, so I
Yeah,
think,
Is anybody
Can
trying
I-
to get in?
Can I just report on something quickly?
oh, here's Christine right here.
Oh,
Um,
great.
I was supposed to ask the legal department whether we were allowed to put a donate button on the website.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I went there, asked my question, was told that I would get an answer by email. I didn't get an answer, and then I called and left 2 messages, didn't get an answer yet.
Okay, so that's a pending request.
Okay.
Right,
Okay, all right. Well, thank you, Isabel. That's great. All
Mhm.
right, that's super. That's wonderful. All right, so we'll just wait to hear back from them. Okay. All right, so Christine was here, but is Carrie here?
Oh,
Christine, is she in?
I think-
I'm here. We're still waiting for Carrie, I think.
Okay, all right, that's fine. You know, we were just we're a little early. So why don't you, do you want to wait until?
I
Carrie-
do want to wait.
Okay,
Yes,
all right,
thank you.
All right, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. Don't worry about it. So I think the next thing that we should do, because I don't want to go into another topic, you know, just because we have 2 minutes, right? So
right.
let's-
You want to approve the minutes from last meeting?
No, because our meeting minutes are going to show up next month. That's fine.
Oh, okay.
So, and then I think that we can talk a little, we just talked a little bit about fundraising, which is good. Is that somebody's?
That's Carrie. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. So why don't we just get started with the Carrie and it looks like I'm not seeing someone else. Okay. All right, Judy Burton is saying that, let me respond to her because she's trying to get in and she can't get in. So, is Judy here? I'm just going to send her the link.
No.
Okay, I'm just sending her the link.
Raina, before
No.
we leave the topic of the historical commission meeting on the 23rd,
Mhm.
we want a big showing that night.
Absolutely. But I was actually going to let everybody know that it hasn't posted yet. The agenda hasn't posted so that we don't have a Zoom meeting link to share.
Okay, but if we do, you will send it out to our
Yes.
mailing list?
Yeah. And whatever they have in the packet,
Thank you.
for the discussion and the agenda itself so that you know when it's going to actually present. All right. So is Carrie and Christine here? Great, super. So do you need to, or did you want to show a presentation or are you going to speak? What is your plan?
We do have slides. We do.
Okay.
Carrie, do you want to share your screen if you've got them up?
You're muted, Carrie.
Because someone's practicing the piano. Yes, I will share my screen. Hang on a sec.
Okay.
There's never a dull moment when you have children at home.
Piano's a good thing.
Mhm.
It beats the recorder in 3rd grade, right?
I hate to be ignorant, but could you ladies introduce yourselves and tell us
Please, Carrie,
what your
because
background is for this? Yeah.
Of course. So I'm going to start talking while Carrie gets the slides up. My name is Christine Dutt. I'm one of the co-chairs, along with Carrie, of Vote Yes for Newton, where a ballot question committee formed to support all 3 overrides here in Newton. Carrie and I originally met through our kids, through our oldest daughters, who play softball, and that's where we met, on the side of a softball field. I do some volunteering in Newton. I'm a former PTO co-president at Burr Elementary. I'm on the school council. At Day, I'm involved with the PTO at North, and my absolute favorite thing to do volunteer-wise in Newton actually is to volunteer at the Auburndale Community Library. And Carrie, I'll let you tell a little bit about yourself, if you're ready.
Actually, I'm sorry. Just give me 1 second. Just give me a second. I'm having a little Google Drive difficulty. I'll be right there.
Sure.
Okay.
Was she the one posting the presentation? I don't see the presentation now. Is it?
So I think that's what she's saying, is
Oh,
that she's
okay,
having
okay,
difficulty with
All right, got it.
I have actually had difficulty. I asked Carrie to share the slides, because I've had difficulty recently with sharing from my computer.
Okay.
So we'll see what it works. She said she's having some difficulty with Google Drive. So I apologize for the technical difficulties.
Okay.
These things happen.
Yeah. Carrie, if it's too problematic, we can flip, and if Sumac is okay. Let me give it, Carrie, are you okay? Are you?
Oh, I'm definitely fine. Okay, I think just let me just double check. So right now you see this screen, and
Right.
I want to share it so you're seeing the slide. Hang on a second.
No, that's not what you want to. You want
I
to
know
go
that's
to
what I
the
want to do.
slideshow. There we
Yes.
go.
Okay, thank you. Excuse me, pardon me. Now I just double check. You can see some kids who are missing teeth, right? And that's all you can see, right?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Excuse me, pardon me. All right, so Christine has introduced herself. I'm doing the odd slide. She's doing even, so I'll pick it up from here. My name is Carrie Prasad, and I am the second co-chair of the Vote Yes for Newton campaign. Our treasurer is Kevin Spector. And as Christine mentioned, we met on the side of a softball field many years ago. And I, similarly to Christine, am involved in a number of volunteer activities or roles in the city. So I've played just about every PTO position at the Countryside Elementary School PTO, and then moved up with my children to Brown and to South as well. I also right now, another hat I wear is as the co-president of the PTO Council, which that's the combination of all the PTOs in the entire city. So we meet once a month and discuss issues that are of importance. And tonight we're here. Thank you so much for inviting us here tonight. Christine and I, our goal here is to teach everyone and tell everybody about the different parts of the override. And we feel very convinced that, we feel sure that all of you will, once you learn about it, will understand why it is important and why a yes vote will make sense. Newton is our home. We all live here. We're all different. We all have different values and different things that we care about. Our families are different, but this is our home. And so that's the place that we're starting from with this campaign. Christine, you're on.
Sure. So we have found that, unsurprisingly, talking about an override means an increase in taxes, and that rightfully makes people nervous and also curious about how it's going to affect them. So as a campaign, we believe that the three override questions give Newton a lot for the money. That QR code will take you to the city's tax calculator and give you an estimate of what the real estate tax increase would be for the property address that you enter. So the median assessed value in Newton right now is 1.2 million. Question 1, if it passes, would add $290 a year to that tax bill starting in July of 2023. If questions 2 and 3 pass, that adds another $183 per year, but that would take a little bit, up to 6 years to take full effect. And there 25% of homes in Newton are assessed at $750,000. or below. And so for a home at 750,000, the tax bill would go up by a total of $283 per year if all 3 questions pass. The other relevant thing is the 7 tax assistance programs available in Newton, and you can go to the Newton City website to find out a little bit more about them. It's also important to note that the City Council and the mayor have worked together to expand those as much as possible so that there's as much financial tax relief available to those who need it.
So we find that the knowledge, people's knowledge about what an override is and the law that's called Proposition 2.5 varies a lot. So we're starting with some real basics here. And many of you in this room, I know this is a very civically active group, so many of you probably know this, but it feels like a good place to start. Proposition 2.5 is a law that passed in 1980 it was a ballot question that people of Massachusetts voted. And the law limits the increase that a municipality's tax levy can rise to 2.5% plus new growth each year. And new growth means new developments and also changes that people make to their house, like renovating your kitchen or your bathroom or something like that. The architects of this law, Proposition 2.5, they knew that from time to time, municipalities would need a mechanism to raise the tax levy more than 2.5%. They knew that because of inflation and the cost of doing different projects would mean that sometimes 2.5% each year wouldn't be enough. And so part of the law is an override, and that is the tool that is used to manage municipal finances in Massachusetts. And it's a good thing. It means that, it's a normal thing. It happens, it's supposed to happen. Nothing unusual about it. It's part of the law and it's what's expected. And that's what we're facing right now.
So Newton has a pattern of passing an override question or questions every 10 years. Many of the municipalities that surround Newton pass overrides more frequently. The average number of overrides a municipality has passed since 1980 is 6. Newton has passed 2. Now it's considering a third. You might have heard that Brookline is also going, to be considering an override in the near future. So that's where we are today. Newton has 3 override questions before it on March 14, which is hard to believe. It's just around the corner. 2 of the questions are debt exclusion questions. So that means that the increase in taxes lasts for the amount of time that Newton makes payments on the debt or the bonds. And that's typically 30 years. And question 1 is the operating override, and that's the permanent increase in the tax levy if it passes.
This is probably a good time to acknowledge that we will be spending a lot of time talking about Newton Public Schools this evening. And that's because 75% of the money raised by the 3 questions will directly impact Newton Public Schools. And there's no escaping that. And it doesn't mean that the other cities' needs are less important, but that is what most of the override addresses. So we're going to start with the 2 last questions. Question 2 is about would raise money to finance the rebuilding or renovation of Countryside Elementary School. The Countryside project is eligible for a $20 million grant from the Massachusetts School Building Authority if question 2 passes. So the whole project would cost $61 million. If we pass this question, the state gives us 20. So we can get the project done for $41 million, the taxpayers paying. Question 3 is a question that will raise the money to finance the rebuilding or renovation of Franklin Elementary School. That will cost about the same as Countryside, $61 million, but it hasn't received the grant. So it's a little bit different that way. Honestly, the poor conditions of both school buildings has been well documented. You can see pictures here. These are many students are being educated in these areas that were supposed to be temporary and have been built. The one at Franklin 50 years ago, the one at Countryside about 35 or 40 years ago. So it's definitely time for these 2 to be rebuilt.
While we're on this slide, I want to talk for a minute about why an operating override is merited today. The city's been facing the same inflationary pressures that people have. There's been a reliance on one-time money that only kicks the proverbial can, down the road, and the city needs a reliable and renewable source of money to fund ongoing expenses. The use of one-time money to pay for operating expenses year after year is not a good choice. So there's a lot here in question 1. I've learned a couple of facts over the course of this campaign, and one of those is that the fastest growing population in Newton is older residents. I also learned that the annual current budget for programs and services for older residents is $800,000. And so this increase of $500,000 that if if question 1 passes, is substantial and important and would be go a long way to meeting, the needs of our older residents. There's also $500,000 to go towards climate resiliency efforts, and that would be to move Newton's municipal buildings away from fossil fuel and to electricity. The first project that would be funded is to convert the oil boiler at Pierce Elementary School to electric. It's worth noting that Green Newton and the 350 Mass Node have both endorsed the override because of its sustainability aspects. So $500,000 to street trees a year. Street trees do more than provide us with a more picturesque community. They're also a facet of Newton's climate resiliency efforts. So $500,000 a year would mean a total of 1,000 street trees planted. And it would also pay for the proper care and maintenance of the new trees as well as the existing street trees. Also in question 1 is the $750,000 that would go towards the renovation of the Horace Mann Elementary School. When Horace Mann moved to its current location on Nevada Street, it became clear that the building would need renovation to provide the 21st century learning spaces that kids need today, as well as classrooms and common learning spaces like the gym and the cafeteria that are actually in the library that are actually large enough for the number of students that attend the school. So Horace Mann is an important part of this, just like the money for the programming for older residents and the climate resilient efforts we just talked about. And Carrie, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Thank you, Christine. The last item on the list that we were just showing you is, it shows that question 1 would provide $4.5 million in renewable and reliable funds each year for Newton Public Schools operating budget. Newton Public Schools has been plugging a structural deficit with one-time money. Some of you might recall last year, the NPS budget faced an initial $4 million budget gap that was reduced to about $1 million by plugging the hole with that one-time money. The school committee, so this can't go on. It just, we need to find a way to have a renewable, sustainable source to pay for this public schools. So earlier this year, in January, the school committee asked Newton Public Schools to come up with a budget preview with 2 versions of the NPS budget. One, if the override passes, and one if the override doesn't pass. If the override passes, that $4.5 million will allow NPS to continue doing what they're doing. It's not going to be anything fancy. It will keep the budget steady. And in fact, there'll even still likely be a budget gap of $2 to $4 million, but the superintendent and the people at NPS feel that they'll be able to cope with that and manage that. If question 1 does not pass, in addition to everything Christine mentioned before, including Horace Mann not getting rebuilt or having to put that off for some time, Newton Public Schools will have a deficit of $6 to $8 million. And in early January, the superintendent talked a little bit about what that would mean. And I'm sorry, at the end of January. And then on March 1st, she gave another presentation, being a little bit more specific and explaining what that will mean in the different grade levels. So some of the possible effects are that class sizes will increase. And in the grades 2 through 5, the classes can possibly increase to 29 children per classroom. There'll be cuts to the middle school and high school sports programs, 10%. Definitely cuts to the fine arts across the board. Fee increases for different programs that the students at the high school and middle school do. Cuts to school transportation. These are some of the possible cuts that will await us. And truly, this is going to be a major step back for Newton Public Schools. I mean, we know that overrides that haven't passed in the past, things that get cut don't come back. They just haven't come back. So we feel that this override question is necessary to keep us where we are for the moment.
So there's streets. One of elected officials tell us the number one thing that they hear residents talk about and complain about is the condition of the streets and the roads here in Newton. And there is the city has a plan on how to repair and maintain the roads. And it calls for a certain amount of money each year. And the operating override would provide a dedicated source of 1.4 million to the city budget for the paving and for the maintenance of streets and sidewalks. And again, this is renewable and reliable funds that would go towards the condition of our streets.
Well, we talked about softball, so I'm sure that you know that Christine and I spend a lot of time outside on different fields throughout the city, and I'm sure that there are people in this Zoom room who do as well, because our green spaces are so important to us in the city of Newton. We value them for all different kinds of reasons. And question 3 in the override will provide $1 million a year for parks, fields, and courts and playgrounds throughout the city. So you can see these are some pictures of the field at Lower Falls before and after. It's been maintained and taken care of in the way we hope to be able to maintain and take care of more fields throughout the city. I think if you go to other towns and other places and you see the fields, so many people say how they feel that our fields are in terrible, awful, embarrassing shape when other teams come and or other people come to visit. So the mayor has put a lot more money toward taking care of our green spaces. And that's actually, I think, really because of a lot of citizen advocacy, which is great. And so this will be another $1 million, even more, toward taking care of these special places for us.
So we wanted to take a little bit of time and talk about some sort of misconceptions that we've heard over the course of the campaign. And folks sort of often say that, well, if we just did this. And so let's talk about ARPA for a little bit. Newton received $63.5 million. 58.6 of that money has already been allocated, and there was 8% purposefully set aside to be allocated and spent before the deadline to deal with unanticipated things that may come up. And so that money has largely been allocated already. So it's not available to be spent on something else. Rainy day funds, again, this is one-time money. And there's a requirement that there be a certain amount, 5% of the budget, that be kept in the rainy day stabilization fund in case of emergency. Free cash, again, that this is money that's in the city budget that's largely left over from the previous year. And so Newton has a procedure about how that money would be spent. And so it isn't until you spend up to 1.5 that would go to the next year's operating budget, and then replenishing the rainy day fund if that has been depleted or if it needs to increase because the budget has increased. And then it's after those 3 things that the free cash would then be used for a one-time non-reoccurring expense. So there's also been some discussion about the overlay funds, and it's true that right now it's higher than usual because of money that Eversource has paid into Newton as a result of litigation over its tax payments. But that's on appeal. And so that money, if Newton loses, would have to be repaid with interest. So that isn't a source of funds that could be used either. And the key thing to remember about all of these funds is that using them to pay operating expenses isn't sound fiscal policy in the long term, right? Sometimes we think about, our own personal emergency fund or rainy day fund, and we might spend it down in an emergency if we need to repair our roof, but that using it for reoccurring expenses isn't wise, because then we deplete it and we don't have it any longer. For reoccurring expenses, we as individuals in the city also needs to have reoccurring, reliable sources of funds to fund the operating budget.
Wait.
Thank you so much. I actually think that I want to hold the questions,
Okay.
just so that because we're running a little bit behind right now. And if Sumak, if you want to do your presentation, and then at the end of your presentation, we'll open it up for the floor for questions.
Thank you. Let me make sure I
Thank
can
you.
share.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I can hear you.
Perfect. Good. First things first, right? I really want to thank Waban Area Council, but I also want to thank Ms. Prasad and Ms. Dutt. We may have different opinions, but I know your heart is in the right place, and I know what goes into running an override campaign, and I want to thank you for all the hard work that you are doing. I'm now here to offer a different perspective, as simple as that, right? Let me just, not everyone knows me, so let me just kind of set the level. We moved to Newton 14 years ago for one reason only: Newton Public Schools. That's simple. We did not have any other connection to the city, religious, work, school, nothing, right? That's why we moved to Newton. The second point to note is I have a child in 8th grade right now. So I have 4 more years. We're committed to the NPS for 4 more years. So I'm not here to do something to cut off my nose and spite my daughter's face. My daughter thinks I'm her favorite child, that she is my favorite child, and I'm not here to do anything to jeopardize in any way. I've been active in the community, Waban Area Council, South's School Council, but the third part, for the last campaign, last override campaign, which Emily Brenner ran, I was coordinator champion for Ainger. I was literally standing outside, the thank you notes, all the stuff which you do as a part of the campaign. I was one of the 20 people. Really, I went back and looked at the emails and counted. So I was very much on the yes side. That's, again, my kids are in public school. I moved to Newton for public school. However, I'm here to tell why not to vote for question 1. Let me take a pause. Question 2 and question 3, which are on Franklin and Countryside, it's pretty clear. If you just have to visit the school, I'll let you make your own judgment on that. The question 1 is a bit tricky, and that's what I'm here to talk about. So why vote no on question 1? Well, for a very simple reason. It does not address the key issues that NPS face today and will likely make it worse. By the way, why NPS? Because NPS, the $4.5 million going towards NPS from the operating override represents 50% of the thing. That is really the core anchor tenant, right? That's your like long pole of the tent. That's what we are talking about. What are the two big problems? Number one, NPS has a structural deficit. I agree with everything what the speakers ahead of before me said. We've been cutting. By the way, even before the last year's brouhaha, which took place, where we had ARPA money just to do that, but we chose not to, and then we finally did it. Even before that, we've been having cuts in NPS, not any of them come to the surface. Small things here, class got cut, AP stopped, elective went away, so on and so forth. This does not address that. The result is there are going to be more cuts coming in. I have data to show you, larger class sizes, fewer programs. Number two, district is moving in the wrong direction. There's a overwhelming data and evidence behind it. And what we are asking, what is been asked from us is, if you're moving in the wrong direction, hit the accelerator. And I'm saying, no, take a stop, look what is the right direction before you hit the accelerator, AKA operating override. I think there's a better way to do it. Number one, in a short term, we have money, we have enough funds in a short term, which will prevent any cuts at NPS. However, we have to do it right. We have to do it right, and we believe for that you need something, an open body such as Blue Ribbon Commission to get this right. Failure or B- is just not an option. So let me jump into those two points. Here you go. Number one, as was outlined even before me, right after you fund the override, the 4.5 million every single year, you still are left with $2 to $4 million of gap. Let's just think about that. That is the gap which keeps on growing and compounding even beyond that. I thought the quote from Susan Albright from last year was spot on. The deficit, the top is the cause, the bottom is the effect. The green line, I will not explain the graph. I don't think it's worth the time. Anyone wants, glad to talk to you offline about it. But the sustainable growth, which is 3.5%, that is the sustainable growth for the revenues of the city. NPS will grow faster than that. That's what the NPS is needed. It will grow faster than that. Even after the $4.5 million override, which will get compounded at 3.5% year over year. The line at the bottom is the cumulative gap. Every single gap means something's going to change. And this is worth stopping and pausing. Why 5 years? The 5 years, the projections which I've drawn are because the mayor has made a promise multiple times that if this override passes, there's no new override for 5 more years. What does that mean? It means, by the way, the one thing I have not modeled in here is the new union contract. They should be getting signed this year. It is quite likely that the union will get a higher COLA, go and buy eggs outside, right? You know why COLA will need to be higher. That will make this gap, the deficit, cumulative deficit, worse. Again, I think teachers deserve full competitive wages. That's not what I'm talking about here. But the structural deficit, which has not been solved, is going to cause problems even worse going ahead. What does this mean for NPS parents? Obvious, right? Larger class sizes, schools will need to be closed. Teachers' offerings have to be cut. It will not be made public. I can guarantee you that. I've been watching NPS for 13, 14 years at this point. What does it mean for people who are not in NPS, who don't have kids in NPS? Well, a couple of things. Number one, schools going down does not help you or your real estate, or just the community, by the way, really speaking. That's number one. Number two, no politician out there is going to go and tell for the first 2 or 3 years that we have a deficit coming up, we have a gap coming up. They will find money one way or the other. The money, Newton Public Schools already accounts for anywhere between 55 to 70% of Newton budget, depending upon how you count it. Nurses' salaries are paid out of the city. Some of the facilities are paid out of the city, etc. So it's a significant part of the budget. The more that budget increases, the more other services will get started crowding out. This is the reason to stop, ask questions for all the endorsers who are enabling them, and ask why this is so. If this is not the right number, show us the right number for the next 5 years, which is what the next override will be, and see for yourself what the cumulative, you can all guess what this gap is going to lead to. Let me move to the point number 2. The quote above came from a student, and it was based on a survey which NPS ran. And look, what the student is saying is really very simple, that NPS district can do more to meet students where they are and support excellence and high achievement at all levels, not merely for those who need more support. What the student is saying is the children who want challenge in some part of their life are being denied that. You can see the data right in front of, that's not my data, it's a NPS data. The confidence is very low amongst the school, amongst the parents about the school officials. 1,700 parents, that's the enrollment that's going to be down from 10 years. Again, NPS data, not mine. Just let me put 1,700 in the context for people. Weston, which is not that far from here, the entire school district is 2,000 children. We are going to lose almost the size of Weston from NPS. People are walking with their feet. They are actually taking decisions. People who are left, people like me, just don't believe the school is going in the right direction. So you may kind of say, this is the part of the social contract, that you do something and you hope things get okay. I would have thought that 10 years ago. But the trust, my personal trust in the administration is at all-time low. They have dismissed the 69%, which is their own data, they dismissed it. The school reopening, when it came to that, Newton was at the end of the line, even though that had a significant major impact on students and students' mental health. Last but not the least, this is not even political, by the way. Rochelle Walensky sent an email to the mayor in July 2020 offering to form a medical advisory committee. Guess when did Newton turn around and form a medical advisory committee to help with the schools and school decisions? January 2021, 6 months after that. No doubt, my trust is just not that the right things will happen. I see the evidence. Again, I voted and came here to Newton, invested myself, but again, that part of the social contract has been broken. Just as a FYI, our downward trend is matched only by Wellesley. Since COVID, other schools, the enrollment went back. We have continued to slide down for 3 years. Why is this the case, by the way? The case is because of the educational offering is under erosion. I'll submit 2 examples to you. 8th grade. In 8th grade, when my son was there at Brown 5 years ago, there was something called as 8th grade honors math. You had to test, assess, get into that. My son was proud about that. Some of his friends were even better at math than him. And they were sent to 9th grade, 9th grade at Newton South to learn math. In other words, Newton did not clip the wings of kids who wanted to fly high. My daughter, who's in fact better than my son at math, please don't tell my son I said so. My daughter, after she's done, only 1 level, by the way, she's made to go online, which is busy work, not learning anything new. She has lost essentially interest in math. At high school level, what they took is they took a regular class, which is ACP, and took honors or AP classes together, brought them together. Just imagine a class with 30 students. A teacher is teaching to students who are looking to support, come to the grasp of some of the concepts, and some kids who are just impatient and want to move forward. They are together, and that is not working well. The data, the proof is in the data, right? And this is the proof. Our rankings. And I'll show that the data is even more powerful, that it's stark. The rankings have slid. Someone once told me Newton High School, which is probably a long time ago, was top 10 in the country. Guess we are almost at top 1,000. So I don't think that's something to be proud of. MCAS, when you compare our MCAS to the peers, the yellow line that you see, the peers are the ones that NPS defined. I did not. When you look at AP exams, right? When you start looking at external data, it becomes clear something's just not right. When you look at AP exams, compared to our peers, we are at the bottom. Newton takes fewest number of APs and the least percentage of kids pass. Nothing can be even more starker than when you look at Calc AB, which is an AP class. Won't get into it. It is an important metric to look at. 50% of Newton kids fail Calc AB at AP. Calc AB, by the way, it's 1 or 2 is fail, 3, 4, 5 is pass. So bar is rather low. And this is a self-selective group of students who want to learn AP, want to do Calc AB. It's not that school forces them, right? 50% failed. For Newton North, it is 70%. State average, and I'm talking about average, which includes failing districts and everyone out there, is 41%. something's just not right, and we are looking to step on the accelerator. I think we should get it done right properly. We have time and we have space to just do it properly. And I'll show what the proper looks like. By the way, SETI did that. When SETI put it out, SETI had everything kind of lined out. There was reasoning, there was justification, everything. The point made by previous speakers was obviously there. The mayor announced override and said 4.5 is going to go to schools. It's part of the override. Well, they put that out in October, November timeframe. The budget for next year came out in January, late January, early February timeframe. Guess what? The first people, when they put the budget together, they guessed at 4.5. They were way off, completely off. How else can you expect the first year when you're putting out a proposal for override, you have an override and you're still going to have cuts, $2 to $4 million. How do you even do that? You know, it's like where 89% of our school goes towards paying wages. So there's not much efficiency to be done. You know, the paper clips are gone, the nice napkins are gone, etc. So there's no efficiency, no efficiency out there. I already know that because some of my daughter's classes for next year are already gone. Electives, we have money, free cash, 26.5. Tax overlay fund, 13.5. By the way, that I already took out the money for Eversource, the pilot fund, as well as the 1% reserve, which is required as a part of the policy. ARPA, we have money that's unspent. Pensions, the state regulation says we have to fund the pensions by 2040. We want to accelerate it. It's like we're trying to make a choice. Do I prepay my mortgage or do I need money to pay for my food? We're trying to kind of here say, no, we cannot do that because we have to prepay the mortgage. I think that's silly. We have 155 approximately good plus or minus sitting out there available in short term. I don't think this is a full-term, long-term solution, but to do it right, we need some breathing space. This is more than sufficient to give us the breathing space. So what does a breathing space would look like? I think the mayor needs to assemble a blue ribbon commission. By the way, the mayor was on a blue ribbon commission along with Paul Levy. These people know it. This is also the second thing to note is this is not a year-long commission thing. This is not like a NATO or United Nations, right? The last BRC completed work in 4 months. We have people here. Again, go back. Rochelle Walensky already had people. Ashish Jha, everyone was ready to be on medical advisory committee. We have parents who have expertise. We just need to tap them and provide a non-political open environment where we can actually come with good solutions. What should the BRC focus on? Excellence, academic excellence. Let's define it. What does it mean to have that? Let's put Newton back where it needs to be a school of choice for people who want challenge for the kids, not only for the children, people who want support. By the way, very proud of that. We are doing great job for people whose kids need support. We also need to make sure that we are doing something for the kids who need challenge out there. We had to reassess the budget. We had to fundamentally go back and look at the structural deficit and the structural deficit is not even, no one is even looking at that. You have to go back, otherwise you will go back and either cut or you will kind of have the gap on an ongoing basis. What are the advantages? I don't think it's advantage. I think that's what we should expect from our district. We need to have an analytical data-oriented basis to build a budget. I don't know how you do. You cannot guess the $4.5 million, which was, let me guess that, and wrong in the year one. That is not acceptable. It reflects the priorities of the community as opposed to NPS, who, as you're saying, the parents think, and the students, by the way, the student number is also there. The 69% of parents think NPS is going in the wrong direction. 60% of the students, high school students, also think NPS is going in the wrong direction. So it's a people with low credibility. Let's get parents in. Let's do it the right way, clear, rational, and let's bring it together. There's too much divisiveness. Right now, we are talking over each other. There's an entire element of fear and guilt that's been built out there. If you don't that, you're responsible for children's education going down, you're getting cut. Let's have a normal grown-up dialogue. Let's look at the data, look at where we want to be, as opposed to doing the way we are. So that is why me as an NPS parent, me as a committed NPS parent, will be voting no on question 1. I urge you to take a look, reconsider. I'm sure when you have the data and facts, not emotions behind you, you will also vote no. If you need more questions, read my op-ed, or of course, you can contact me anytime between now and Tuesday. Regardless which way you intend to vote, please go and vote next Tuesday. Thank you.
Thank you, Sumak. And you came in under time. That's great. right, so I want to open the floor for a couple of questions, if we could spend the next 5-10 minutes. And, if everybody wants to, let's do it, by raising hands, because I think that that's the easier way to rather than the chat function. So I see Councilor Crossley's got her hand up. Would you like to unmute? Are
Sure,
you?
thank you,
Okay.
Raina. So I've been to so many override presentations. I personally don't have any questions about why we need the override. My questions and comments, this is the first time I've heard, I'm sorry, Samuk? Thank you.
Exactly, Subuk, yeah.
Okay, good. Speak. I've read some of your pieces. So I want to first say the structural deficit is a function of Proposition 2.5. Massachusetts is one of only 2 states in the nation that arbitrarily limits its property tax in this way. It was very clear from the get-go that, and the advocates of Proposition 2.5 knew this and said this, that in order to make Proposition 2.5 palatable to the voters and win it, they had to make sure they were clear that, look, it's designed to work with overrides. The purpose of Proposition 2.5 is to moderate tax increases according to need. And in some communities across the Commonwealth, there was probably a lot of waste. And I will say that probably in Newton too, there was some mismanagement. We certainly inherited a mess in 2010, those of us who took our seats in 2010. But the arbitrary limit of 2.5% plus new growth does not nearly keep pace with the cost of doing business. That's particularly true since COVID. So, I think having a blue ribbon commission to do pretty much exactly what you said is a fine idea. But I would do it and pass the override. Why on earth would we want to make our kids and our city suffer? These are the override is paying for all of the things that we hear every day that our citizens want. And you've said from the school point of view, you want them too. So the kinds of services you want in the schools would involve more money, not less money. So, money just, like my folks always said to me, money doesn't grow on trees, right? The way the city gets most of its revenue is through property tax. Simple, hard fact. So when over 80% of our revenue is arbitrarily limited by a state law, that, in my opinion, is a terrible law. It did do a couple good things, but let's not get into that right now. It's really hurt a lot of communities deeply, deeply across the Commonwealth who have not been able to pass overrides at all, for example. And the ones who pass them regularly, as our former Blue Ribbon Commission recommended we do, they said we need regular overrides in order to maintain the level of quality of services across the board that we want to expect in the city of Newton. It's why almost all of us came to this city, was primarily for the schools. So you're right, these short-term funds cannot be used sustainably to feed the budget the way it needs to be fed. If there's another brilliant idea out there about how to bring more revenue into the fold without passing more revenue, more overrides, let's figure that out. But let's do it on top of passing this one, which is so clearly needed. You say you support living wages for teachers. I have a teacher now in my family. I see how hard he's working and his teacher friends. I see every day how hard they're working, how many hours they're putting in. And the teachers support the override because they know they need this infusion of funds in order to maintain the staffing that's going to allow them reasonably to at least continue providing the level of service that they have. And I finally want to say, I, as a city councilor, when it comes time for budget, if this override passes, I'd be the first one to say to anyone who matters, the mayor included, of course, let's dig in. And I know the schools believe they've gotten their deficit down to $1.5 million. 2 million, $1.5 million is something you can work with. However, I think we ought to find that money and put that money forward in particular so that we can hire the interventionists. I don't know if that's the right word, but the teachers who can intervene and help bring some of our students who have lost time and lost part of their education due to the hard years we've been through from COVID, help them catch up. So I think that's all I want to say right now. I appreciate your intense scrutiny of the schools. We need that all the time, actually. But I think your basic message here is we need more, not less. How can we get more into the package? It's not like we're wasting money. How can we get more so that we can maintain the level of quality of schools that we'd like to expect and offer the challenges you say your kids need at the same time that we're offering not only services to kids who have fallen behind, but all those kids in the middle. So
Yeah. Thank you, Councilor Crossley. Sumak, do you want to respond?
I do. Thank you. I'm not going to get into Prop 2.5. I think it's outside my control personally. But I think it is, if you're talking about structural deficit, that it is the Prop 2.5 is going to make structural deficit as an endemic thing. The hope or the expectation would be that the 5 years, which Mayor has said, no new override, that you expect not to have a structural deficit for the next 5 years at least. Here, what you're having is you're going to have an override and cuts and fees starting year 1. This is not even bringing things which have been cut before, by the way. Things have been cut before. Here, starting year 1, you are still left with $2 to $4 million of deficit after the override is still there. I don't know why that's even acceptable to us. It's like a B-, that like you have to kind of pay. It's like someone saying, I'm going to perform, you need triple bypass, but I'm going to perform only single bypass. And then after 5 years, we'll look at the other 2 blocks on your arteries. I refuse to buy that as a justification. That's number 1. Number 2 is that, by the way, what that means, the cumulative is very meaningful, $60 to $100 million. We are talking about cuts. It's not small money here and there. You're talking about deep cuts, which will be required. But that's just deficit, right? We haven't gone back and looked at the core budget structure of NPS. It's just assumed. It just assumed that it's all okay. This is the fact. Our outcomes are not all that great, as the measurement which I just shared, right? Like MCAS, hate MCAS, it is what it is. Like APs, hate APs, it is what it is, right? Those are the only 2 subjective external measurements out there as it relates. And of course, the US World News, which is created by a very reputable company called RTI International. So our outcomes are not there. When it comes to spending money per student, we are very much in line with our peers. So something is fundamentally broken. I have not seen a single proposal out there from anyone to say, even after the override, I'm going to go back and open it up completely. Not me, by the way, don't trust NPS, sorry about that. But we're going to form a external auditors, commission, whatever, to go and look at it. I believe we have money. We have enough money. If Lexington can do that with almost the same amount of money, I think we can do that as well. So we're never going to look at the structure of our budget and consequently not going to address the structural deficit. Number 2, given what they have framed it out to be, we are still going to have cuts, erosion of academics, etc. It's a vicious circle. More parents will leave the system and we are not going to be better off where we are today. And I think we need to stop. It is like a student turning in a B- paper, C+ paper, and we saying, okay, maybe you learn better. No, you got to go back, take a couple of days out more and come back with what you're more capable of. That's what my point of view is.
So, Rena, I had one question in my talk and it's not been answered.
Sure.
The one question is, why on earth would you punish our students today?
Mhm. That's just not true, by the way. I don't know if you saw my presentation. I'm saying don't do any cuts. I have students in public schools. Why would I want to ask them to kind of do cuts? I'm saying the city has access to $155 million today. So you don't have to have cuts. You know what? I've listened to the entire video from Maureen. I went through her lengthy memo line by line, and I came back to that, and I sent someone on this call who's a city official a template. This is what has been proposed out there. Put a counterpoint point by point instead of trying to write a long prose out there. It's numbers, right? I believe it's 155. Chris Brzezinski, who is on the school committee, believes that by restructuring the pension payment, we can get $90 million. I'm absolutely not saying big cuts. Cuts are not acceptable. We have money. I think we need political willing to kind of fund that money and use that money for where the need is the greatest, not look at the promises which were like, let's go back to John F. Kennedy, right? Don't ask why, ask why not. Why cannot we touch some of this money? Why can we restructure? Why can we take back the commitment that we have made or some of the things that we have done to put money where it needs to be? No, I'm not proposing cuts. I will not accept cuts. We have the money. What we need is a political will to get it right, use the money in short term to give us the breathing space and do it right. It's this too long, the NPS has gone down the path of it will happen, and it has never happened.
Rena, you're muted.
Someone Angelo Volantes is saying that there are 4 people with questions, and Tariq, you're the only one I'm seeing with a hand up. Angelo, did you want to ask a question?
Well, we've just spent 10 minutes on one question. I think that's unfair. I think the other folks who had their hands up should ask their questions as well. Thank you.
Yeah, but who is that? Whose question? Who would like to ask a question? Tariq, you're the only one I see with a hand up.
Why don't we go to Tariq?
Yeah, let's go to Tariq, but please reissue your hands because I'm not seeing anybody else with a hand up.
Okay, so thank you to all who presented. Carrie, Christine, I apologize. I arrived late. Sorry. I was out and I got home late, and I also had to take out the trash and recycling. Tomorrow's trash day. Sorry. But I do hope to watch a recording of it tomorrow. Can I ask that all who presented, can you share your materials with Rena, and she can put it up on the website, on the Waban Area Council website? Okay, thanks. And I have a question for Sumak. Quick question.
Sumuk, by the way.
Sumuk.
Yeah.
Sorry. I
correct people. I'm used to correcting people.
In your second or third slide, you had that if the override passes, there will be a greater deficit compared if it doesn't pass. Did I see that
No,
correct?
I did not know. That's not what I said. Let me just.
No,
if
the
override
slide.
passes- Yeah, here, I can pull the slide up.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Yeah, this is the deck.
It was the orange and red.
Yeah.
There you go.
So what I'm saying is, even if the override passes, if you grow the budget at the sustainable rate, which is 3.5%, everyone agrees 3.5% growth is a sustainable growth. Even with that, the needs of Newton Public Schools are going to be higher than that. That's what the orange and the red line is. And by the way, for full disclosure, I took out that there's something in this year's budget, there's a one-time cost. It is healthcare. I just took that out. You know, one time I gave that benefit of doubt. Even despite that, our costs are growing higher. We have structural problem in the city. And that is what leads, that's the cause. The effect is a cumulative gap. That is what's going on. And that's what I'm projecting to be.
And that's if the override passes.
That is indeed, if the override does not pass, this line is going to be worse because the $4.5 million is going to be, and I'm not saying that the line can continue forever. That's why you need to do 2 things. You need to fund this gap in a short term. So there are no cuts. Cuts are not acceptable. That's number 1. Number 2, get people to look at the structural deficit, the structural budget of NPS. There's something missing big time. And number 3 is also look at the academic offering and academic vision while you're looking at that. At that point, we can actually go back and say, this is where we want to go, and this is what's needed. So we are not going to ask people for an override and still go with cuts. That is what is being proposed today. I think that's a false option to give to people. I think if you're paying for override, you should not have to go and endure cuts on an ongoing basis. In fact, I'm saying we should go back to what some of the programs that we had, which we were cut even before that. The only way we find out is when some mom or some dad or some student goes onto Facebook and complains, or there's a petition.org that comes out. My son's debate club at Newton South, 100+ kids was going to be supported by 0.25 FTE. They cut 0.25 FTE 2 years ago. That club's gonna die at some point, you know? After all, you need the teacher to be the grown-up in a room when the kids are like practicing later on. Jazz club, jazz as an elective offering, cut. The only way you find that out is when parents go and complain. That's what, and it's obviously the deficit, as you can see, is way starker than that. The problems are going to be way more bigger, even after the current override passes.
Okay, thank you.
Are you done, Tariq?
Well, you know, I always have more to say, but
Okay,
you know
okay,
what?
okay.
I will let Jane go,
Okay.
and she has the floor.
Okay.
Thanks so much. Sumok, I completely agree that a blue ribbon commission would be a great idea. I think it's necessary. It hasn't happened in a long, long time. And our financial situation has changed dramatically since 2007. I would like to point out that yes, the Blue Ribbon Commission did complete its work in four months in 2007, but the override to close the structural deficit did not pass for another 6 years until 2013. So using one-time money for 1 year or even 2 years is problematic in my mind. If we run out of that money and we have all this information and we still do not have an override passed, where does that leave us other than continuing to make cuts? And that's my concern. It takes a very, very long time for to work through these processes in the public sector, as we've seen over, whether it's land use, whether it's school issues, whether it's, roads and sidewalks, whatever the issue might be, zoning. It's not something that happens within a year's time. And I'm extremely concerned about going through all of that money and then ending up with nothing and still not having the override money, funding from the override.
If I could respond very briefly. Look, you are putting together a hypothetical in front of me. I'm not a politician to say the odds of the override passing in 2 years after now, even if you have the right justification and right evidence, the community behind you, I'm not that numbers person when it comes to it. I'm looking at what's in front of me. What's in front of me is there will be override and there will be still cuts. And I personally don't even understand how can we put that in the same sentence together. And that to me is unacceptable. I think in my opinion, you got to do it right. There are kids education here at stake. 70% of North kids failing AP Calc, AB. How is that even acceptable to us? 70%, 70. And that's just one exam, right? Like if you look at AP, compared to our peer groups, we are taking way more. Like here, I can share the data if anyone, in fact, is care. I guess I'm the only one who kind of cares about things like that. But here, look at this data. Here, look at the passing rate for Acton, Boxborough, Belmont. We are at the very low on the passing rate, and average number of APs taken 0.66. We're at 0.22.
We're not seeing that. We're not seeing that.
Here, let me just. It's current thing is like just by saying that current thing will be okay here. This is the data. It's a public data, by the way. I don't have access to some super secret databases. This is Newton average. Acton, Boxborough, 97% of kids passing. Our passing is 82. Average AP taken 66.66, by the way. We are taking 0.22. It's like we're taking fewer APs, failing at that. Newton used to be like 5 years ago. We were slightly better than that. We're at 76%, now we're at 50% in Calc AB. It's like we are going in a direction which is like, why? Why are we doing that? And why are we taking that as an acceptable answer? And it is because we are not fundamentally willing to kind of like take a look, closer look, thinking, oh my God, something worse will happen. We are living by fear. We have been motivated by fear. And I don't believe that is the right way to do it. And again, I will say it. I love my daughter dearly, and she's going to be in NPS for the next 4 years. We are committed to public schools. I feel it's one of the last common goods that exist in the country that actually binds us together. If public school goes down where many other parts of our economy have gone down, then there's nothing common left between us, really. And that's, I don't see any, I think we cannot accept the place which is headed.
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, Chris?
Yeah, I have a very short question, really. Wow, something's going on. I'm, for the first time, I'm hearing a lot of parents are pulling their kids out of school, and people. I was shocked to even hear about this. So, if somebody could maybe speak to why. One, there's like, I guess this is the first time in maybe decades that the school system is seeing a decline, and a sharp one according to your data there. So I'm just like, so that combined with the fact that Newton's been losing population over the last 2 years. So I don't know what's going on, but to suggest there's losing 1,000 students, that's like 2 schools or something. That's a huge amount. So indeed, it sounds like there's a lot going on, and there needs a lot of reaction to how to do resources. And I certainly agree with the Blue Ribbon Commission idea, because I think you need some more heads on this. And throwing money at the problem doesn't sound like it's going to fix it. And I mean, there's a lot of talk about, in theory, just I think what Deb was really talking about. In theory, if you do this and this and that, and you get that, but in practice, it's not happening. So, and I just don't understand what's gone wrong. Why the train has fallen off the rails here. My kids have been out of school for, they're out of college now. So but they went through the entire system, and Newton North was quite rigorous for my kids, and Ainger was incredible for my kids. So it's really disheartening to hear this kind of stuff happening. So,
Comments, or are we good?
So my question is, why the what's going on where the enrollment's going way down?
I don't know.
Yeah. Christine, do you want to go first?
So in part, enrollment is going down because birth rates are going down. And so all of our peer districts are also experiencing a general decline in enrollment. It is also true that students periodically leave a district for a variety of reasons, right? Some move to another district in Massachusetts, some move out of state, some move to a private school. And I think a lot of what we are seeing in Newton is enrollment trends due to birth rate. It is true that during the COVID impact, the years most impacted by COVID, that there was a larger than usual number of students who left Newton Public Schools. Though that number has stabilized. And so what enrollment, those trends look significantly like they did pre-COVID. So there's that. I would also like to point out that in terms of the direction of Newton Public Schools, that Carrie and I have heard many people say, many parents of current students say, that they are thrilled, giddy, so excited to have Dr. Anna Nolan as the next superintendent of Newton Public Schools. And there have been parents who have expressed to us that they were undecided on question 1, but they are so happy with the choice of Dr. Nolan to lead NPS, that they have decided that they want to vote yes on question 1 because they want to give the new superintendent the best possible set of tools to succeed. I think that a blue ribbon commission certainly could be one of those tools, but setting up a new superintendent for a known deficit doesn't sound like a recipe for success. And I think I'm excited about the new superintendent too. Everything I've heard is wonderful. I have a good friend whose sister lives in Natick and had nothing but fabulous things to say. So I think many parents who may not have been happy are looking forward to what the future has in store.
Thank you, Christine.
Can I offer a
Oh,
different?
yeah. Sorry, Sumak, I
Sure,
did.
of course. And I don't want this to be a debate, by the way, just saying it. This is not like a counterpoint, but again, I just have a different opinion. I'm sorry. So answer your question, Chris, why are people moving out? We don't know. After 3 years after COVID, we do not know the answer, as simple as that. That question has been asked every year at Newton Public School Committee, and they say, yes, we should ask. And like, we never ask. If you don't know why, you'll probably never get the answer and you will never be able to fix it, if at all. That's number one. The number two, the entire construct around birth rate, right? Let's look at simple data. The data is very simple. Number of students in Newton in public schools, plus the number of students in private school. If you look at that is, i.e. the total number of Newton kids who go to schools, private schools, home schools, etc. That number is pretty much stayed the flat. Like goes up by 10, 15, 20, not that much, up and down. It's like within margin of error. It is the split that is changing. Newton is now at 22-23% of kids are in private schools. And by the way, when you compare that, the only big school system around us where the numbers are like that is Wellesley. We are really at the bottom range of when it comes to number of kids in private. So, and yes, the birth rates are declining, but the data, empirical data has shown that birth rates are declining. Newton is getting older, but when people have children outside Newton, they move to Newton for schools. That is the historically, in fact, I have looked at the split graph at one point where, yes, it went when new people, like the kids who went to Newton kindergarten were born in Newton, and that percentage dropped significantly, suggesting the kids were born outside Newton and moved to Newton. So yes, that is the unfortunate part, is the split, people moving out. The third point is Dr. Nolan. I absolutely agree with Ms. Prasad that, I don't know if it was Ms. Prasad, or, Ms. Dutt, that I am excited about Dr. Nolan. I truly am. I think she is a rock star. I have talked to enough people. However, I don't know what is the right thing. We are going to saddle her with a huge deficit and saying there's no new source of, I don't even know why the mayor would go out and publicly commit herself to 5 years of no new override. We are in fact she has to go and work on someone else's budget as opposed to putting her own mark in the first 5 years and saying, this is what I want Newton to be and have. So look, we can all guess what Ms. Prasad, what Ms. Nolan wants. I obviously don't have a point of view. I am excited about her, but I think those are the kind of points which I wanted to make sure that I was able to provide you with my perspective.
Bill, are you able to ask questions?
Yes, I have a specific question. So I'm always a little amused when I hear the phrase, we can't just throw money at the problem to make it better, because in many cases, of course, the problem is lack of money. I mean, you talk about why quality might be declining if there is indeed a decline in quality, and things like offerings being cut and so forth goes back to that question of, do we have enough revenue to cover the needs? And if we don't, then we make cuts, and then presumably the quality starts to slide. So, the question has come up, and again, I think I'd like Samuk to drill down on this a little bit more about this structural deficit question, where that comes from and what our options are for addressing it. Because as his chart correctly showed, we can anticipate that the revenue in the city grows by about 3.5% a year in a pretty typical year lately, and for the current projections. And then the question is, what are the cost factors that go up by more than that? That's what creates fundamentally a structural deficit. So as Councillor Crossley alluded to earlier, a lot of this is artificial in that it's Prop 2.5 has a limit on how much the revenue goes up without an override. But talk about specific examples. What are our solutions for this, right? If the bus contracts to provide school bus services, which we have to do, goes up by 9% every year, and the revenues go up by 3.5%, now you're working backwards. If the cost of living goes up in the contracts for the teachers, our biggest contract in the city, by more than 3.5% in order to keep pace with peer communities around us, now we're working backward because that's more than the revenues are going up by. That's what creates a structural deficit on an ongoing basis. That's a hard problem to solve. One of the tools is to increase the revenue, and this is one of the ways that you can increase the revenue by. But what I didn't hear, and what I'd like to hear more from Samuk in his presentation, is what realistically are we supposed to do about a structural deficit in order to not have to make further cuts to other things if we have certain costs that we know, no matter how fiscally prudent we are going to go up by more than 3.5%. That's the no-win situation that we're in. And we know from 1998, we know from 2008, when overrides failed, that there were cuts to programming, that the school's quality dropped, and those things were never put back, right? The elementary languages never came back after that was cut when I was in second grade, right? A bunch of arts and other electives got cut from the high school levels and things like that when the 2008 override failed. I was a junior in high school for that, right? I went through the Newton schools. I've experienced the impact directly from when the overrides fail, and you can potentially fill some things once or twice with one-time funds. I don't recommend it from a fiscal standpoint, and that's not what the Blue Ribbon Commission recommended last time. But how do you address this artificially created structural deficit when we have these costs that we can't really get around and can't reduce in order to just maintain existing levels? That's why things get cut back. That's why we lose offerings. That's why we lose our elite level classes and special electives and clubs and things like that, is because we have to cover certain things and we don't have the revenues to do it because of the artificial limitations on our revenues.
So if I could, right, you made 2 points. The first point which you made, I think it was not a point question, it was a point which you made, which was that the reduction in revenues is what led to cuts so far. I'm sure there's an element of truth to it, but if you look at last 5 years, the per pupil spending for Newton Public School has gone up by 30%. So it's not that we are at a lack of funding. The money has gone up. It's, again, you can go back and look at the budgets. It's all there in the open for anyone to see. So I think there is some something is fundamentally wrong. I have looked at it, but I have a perspective, right? I think this is not a question, in my opinion, something as important and so core to the future of the public school. That's why we need a Blue Ribbon Commission. You need to bring in 8, 10 like experts who know these things inside out, or who can learn it very fast and get to the problem. It cannot be based on stories which we all experience in our lives. This is like it's like we are like someone once explained to me that you can either be a bush pilot and look outside and figure out how you're doing, or when you're running a jumbo jetliner, you're looking at the dials. I think we also have to look at the dials here, and the dials are quite complex, not even that complex. We have not looked at the dials to see where the red light is bleeping from, and I think that's the problem. That's why you need a Blue Ribbon Commission instead of me offering a perspective. I think the first question we have to look at is really, I don't even think, by the way, what we are talking here, there's an implicit agreement that something's not right. We may have our own reasons, by the way, and that's perfectly fine, right? We may all come at it, but there's 70% of Newton North kids failing AP Calc AB, which is a optional, it's an elective class. Kids choose to go there. We think there's a problem out here based on the data. The Newton North principal went out, took a victory lap last week, said how great they are doing. They went to school committee last Monday and said, this is why we are doing so fabulously great. Number one, we are not at the step one of the 9-step process that like, I'm Sumukh, I have a problem, right? We're not even there yet. So we are talking about like the solution, but I think we are not even at the fundamental problem of knowing that there is a problem. I think that's why I think we have to take a step back, come together as a community. We cannot have like where someone as important as a principal of a school taking a victory lap, literally. If anyone wants, I can forward the email to you. And here, like we are looking at data and saying, wow, I'm glad my son is not, or my daughter is not at Newton. No, we're not talking to each other. And I think we need to get there first. That's what a common body like a Blue Ribbon Commission of people who are not affiliated with the schools, experts, will help us get there. So yes, we can all offer answers. I'm not here to kind of offer solutions at this point. I think the first thing is, I'm Sumukh, I need help. We're not there yet.
Rena, you're muted.
And then Drake.
I think Miss Pam Wright is the next.
Yeah,
I think.
Pam was.
Yeah. Counselor Wright, sorry.
Okay, hi, sorry, I'm very late to the game here. I had another event. I just want to point out, overall, the new public schools students are going down, but both high schools are increasing by a lot. And last year, I think they increased something like 40 or 60, but they had to do a cut in the number of teachers, and they're predicting even more students next year. So the high schools are bursting at the seams. Thanks.
Yeah, I think I was just going to make a point, which is, yes, that is, I think, like what is the ball going through the snake as you see it. Elementary school population has dropped significantly, like significantly. It's starting, as I said, overall 1,700 kids are expected to, the enrollment is expected to drop by 1,700 kids, which is almost as big as Western. But like the problem is starkly in the elementary school. That's why you see it going down from there onwards. But yeah, I was today at my daughter's high school event, the welcome, whatever, the step up day, but get to know Newton South, and sounds like a big class, but you're right. High schools still have good enrollment. Elementary is where the problem is, and you'll see that growing up as kids get older and older.
And one other thing I want to point out, in my neighborhood, there's a couple of different families that came from other parts of the country and looking for schools for their kids. There's special needs students and that, and they're all looking, they figured out Newton North was the best for them. And some came without jobs, some came with jobs. So I think our high schools are a magnet for people coming in, but maybe not as much for the elementary and middle schools. Thank you.
No, I think I don't think that's the right interpretation, Councilor Wright, but I think maybe it's offline conversation. What I would say is, I think we should be proud that our schools are a magnet for people who choose to come here, for kids who need support or have special needs. I think we also need to develop a school system where people come here because we can fulfill the children's need for challenge as well. But again, it's a longer discussion. I don't know if anyone else wants to offer that, but I think it's worth having an offline conversation on that one.
Okay, thank you.
Drake.
Yeah, so we talked a lot about Proposition 2.5 tonight, and the structural deficits. But my understanding is that the structural deficit that we're running is in part or even majority because we have made the decision for good reason to fully fund pension liabilities by 2030. So because of that, the pension and OPEB are something like 52 million in the 2023 budget. So my question is sort of a financial question here is, once we hit the funding in 2030, do we know what sort of maintenance funding we need to contribute after that? Has the city done any sort of modeling to get an idea of what that would look like? Because I'm wondering does that difference make up the structural deficit that we're running in regards to school funding? or are we setting ourselves up for another override in 5 to 7 years? Because, yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, so the pensions and OPEB stuff is really tricky to deal with. I think if I remember correctly, you can't even do an override specifically to raise money for that, which then means it's going to come out of other sources of funding. And we are pretty much in line with our peer communities for our current funding schedule. This is something that, by the way, on the Finance Committee that we ask about every year in great detail to make them justify how they've arrived at their numbers and projections and so forth. But it's also not a decision that's entirely up to the control of the mayor. She has to negotiate with an external board. And if they believe that she's not putting in enough money in a particular year, they can say, nope, you have to increase the contribution. I agree in theory, like if it were totally up to me, I would not be putting as much money as we're putting into pension pre-funding, but I think any mayor in this position would be because of the state requirements for getting those to pre-funding. And eventually we'll get to a certain point where it's funded enough that its own investment income can generate the necessary additional amounts every year. So like say in 2036, whoever is the mayor is going to be able to make it rain on any budgetary priority that they want. But until then, we are really kind of bound into this idea. Now, earlier, the presentation on why to vote against this suggested that we could potentially re-examine the date that we have. That would be going against, by the way, the Blue Ribbon Commission recommendations, I believe, from, was it 2007, I think was said. And as I said, we're not that far ahead or really ahead at all on average of our peer communities. For our funding schedule, we're slightly ahead of the statutory requirement, but I think that's really to give us a cushion because it is pretty likely that we're going to have trouble hitting that target, even at the current pretty aggressive level of funding being put in every year. Because you're counting on a certain rate of return in the markets and so forth, which might not be realistic. You're counting on, you know, a lot of things going right every single year, all the way to 2036 for both pensions and the other benefits. And so if you set the date as the final possible date, that does not leave you a lot of wiggle room if you start running into really serious fiscal problems. So the fiscal management guidelines for the city are, you know, pretty strongly recommend sticking to the timetable that we have. And there are some communities that are being even more aggressive and going faster than we are. There are some that are going slightly slower, but most of them are, you know, give or take a year, about the same target timetable as what we have in Newton. So, you know, like I said, it's in an ideal world, maybe this isn't how I would be doing it, but even if I were the mayor, I would probably be on a pretty similar schedule to what this mayor is. And I think that's true for, you know, if Amy were the mayor, if Scott were the mayor, I think we'd be seeing pretty similar funding schedules for pre-funding the pensions.
So it seems like at the best case, we would reach that funding level by 2030, and then maybe have some money to address the deficit that we would still have
once we hit the pension target, then you have to hit the OPEB target. That's a few more years. And once you've hit that, then yes, all of a sudden you have a huge amount of fiscal flexibility every year in the budget to be able to, you know, have a higher allocation for the schools, for example, like you said.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, because when we talk about structural deficits, like we're not just talking about a structural deficit that goes on forever. We're talking about a deficit until, you know, best case, you know, 2030, middle of 2030s.
Yeah, which is a ways away, unfortunately. So we have to figure out something to do in the meantime for funding.
Yeah. All right. I think we are good, unless anybody wants to comment on that back and forth with Drake and Bill.
Yeah. I just wanted to point out that, and maybe Bill or Andrea or any of the city councilors here could point out that Massachusetts changed the rules for how that accounting was handled. So every city across the state had to do the same thing that Newton has done and sort of put aside a bigger piece of the pie now. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's, it explains.
That's accurate and doesn't just apply to municipalities, but to every public body. MWRA has pre-funded its pensions, and every time the market goes down, it has to put more money in. And it's working on its other retirement benefits to try to get that pre-funded. And it's tough to meet the target because, if the stock market goes down, that's exactly when you have to put more money in order to hit that target again. So I think everyone is sort of hoping that there will be some flexibility built in some revision to the law, because it's going to be very, very tough to meet it.
I thank everybody for participating and coming this evening. We went way over. It's 9:25 and here we are. But thank you, Christine and Carrie and Smock. I actually, if you could send me your PowerPoints, so we will post them with our meeting agenda so that other people can, who aren't able to attend, can review those slide decks. Yeah, I would appreciate that. But thanks again for coming.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, I'm not even going to blitz. It is 9:26 and I'm sorry to say that we are not, I will, I'll recap the rezoning next month. And then I'm thinking the only other thing that I might want to talk a little bit about, because we do, is the Wellesley Park, the 40R amendments, because they have a select board meeting on the 13th of March. But again, these are not participatory meetings. And let me pull up that slide deck, because I think that, there's just a few comments to be made with that one. So let me share my screen. Everybody's leaving, which is fine. That's good. We had a lot of people here for the override discussion. Oh, and everybody needs to remember the 14th is the actual date to, if you didn't go and vote early. It's next Tuesday. Okay, so can we see this? Let me get this out of the way. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, we're seeing it.
Okay. All right. So I think that probably rather than going into the to too many of the specifics of this, let it be known that they're very much in process. There was a meeting on the 21st of February that we had our new director of transportation planning for the city of Newton, Joss Ostroff, who spoke for the city at the public hearing. And I think that he was, I'm thankful that he came because I think that it's important for Newton to be part of this conversation in terms of, what's going to happen at that site. So this is actually what he said. But he included us as identified stakeholders, Newton stakeholders, because of our, we've been previously involved with this issue. And we would want, you can read what's here, we would likely want an opportunity to the proposed specific mitigation to ensure that already difficult and problematic transportation network is offset by other investments and services to ensure that the general well-being of that region, including the potential development or redevelopment that may happen for the commercial properties even further west, that Sun Life and the other large property across the street are, in process of being redeveloped. So, that whole zone is going to get a lot of new development. Yeah. So I think that, unfortunately, it's, the other piece of this conversation is that Wellesley chose to use that site to fulfill their MBTA compliance, for the MBTA Communities Act, and they identified in the compliance plan that, our stop, the MBTA stop here at Waban as well as Elliott, would fulfill their requirements to be located near transit. And, this is the plan that this is their application. But I think that what people need to know is that there are weekly meetings coming up of their select board, and they're going through the mitigation process right now, because their annual town meeting, where their town meeting members will vote on this, is the 27th of March. So this is rapid fire right now, but it's important to listen because they're actually going through the development agreement, and they're actually sort of talking through what what they will require in terms of mitigation in order to accept and vote in support of the 40R amendment. Okay. All right. Oh, Chris.
Yeah, Rena, we've said this before. I mean, they're very smart of Wellesley to build their 40B in Newton.
It's a 40R. It's a
40R. I know,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
the requirement and all that. And they could just I wish we could build ours in Wellesley, but so my question is, can we have any say or influence or anything? I mean, they seem kind of boxed in, as it's nice to see that it's acknowledged by our officials that there's one way in and out of that whole complex.
Right.
And so, that's going to be a pressure point.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but to me, it feels like, I remember one of the first meetings when they came to us and they finally just said, hey, we're just here as a courtesy. You actually have no input to say anything to us. So
Yeah.
I'm just feeling like that's probably the same case.
Well, what I suggest is that it's important for us, and now I'm so thankful that the city is engaged, because I sort of feel as if it's they have a TMD plan, a transportation development mitigation plan, but they're who's doing the measuring, and we have a couple of documents that are saying that this change is not going to be a significant change to the site, but they have 350 units on the site right now. They're trying to shift the 175 hotel units to 250 units, and then on top of that they have the additional residential units of the that they were allowed. So I sort of feel as if at each phase of this development, they're supposed to reassess the traffic needs and then implement strategies to mitigate.
Yeah.
So, that's where we get involved, in the sense of, we're right here, and it's important for us to say, whoa, wait a minute, as Bill at one of our meetings and asked some of the people that showed up, what's it like right now? And I actually had the experience of, it's a really, really difficult intersection because people are trying to merge on. Everybody knows this.
Yeah. I suggest if people haven't driven back there to see what's going on, that you do that. You really,
well, it's pretty mind-blowing.
If you haven't seen it before, you'll be surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to say that as someone who goes to Wellesley several times a week, I have noticed in the last few months that it takes me more time to go through the stop sign because there are many cars who are getting off Route 9, going under and making a U-turn to go on William Street. It wasn't like that before. Maybe you get one, but now you get many.
Yeah, if you're eastbound on Route 9, it's the only way you have to do as Sally once called it, I think it's like a Michigan turn or something. It's like you have to do the turn in order to get into the office park.
Right.
Yeah.
So there are many cars going under Route 9 that I have to stop for.
Yeah.
So really different.
The other piece of this conversation is that when a project is going to come through the permitting process in the town of Wellesley, it's in front of their ZBA, and it's a by right process. So they, they, by right meaning is they have full right to do whatever they want to do, but, there's, the site plan review process. So I think that what's really important is to look in the details of the development agreement, and make sure that, the slip range, they're already at the 25%, in terms of the design for the slip ramp to the, merge into here, as you come in, you exit, because this is the only way right now in and out of the site. The slip ramp is supposed to come this way and then merge directly onto 128 North. So, and in the prior time, 40% of the traffic exiting was, going out this way and then coming on to 128 North. So that is a very good solution, for quite a bit of the, exiting traffic. Lisa, do you still have your hand up? Did you want to ask a question? One hand?
I think I'm okay. I was wondering if you mentioned other development projects like in the Sun Life.
Oh, yeah, across the street up here.
Are those residential?
No, we don't know. We don't know. This was just in, because Barney Heath, our planning director, and they met with the Wellesley counterparts. And then that's when they found out that, even more development is being planned for that area. Yeah. So, it's good to know this because I think that, we need to be involved.
Right. And Rena, just to clarify, did you say that Wellesley is intending on meeting their entire MBTA community's obligation?
Yeah, that site is, it makes 60% of their, is by having the zoning that they have proposed on that site, it fulfills 60% of their requirement for the MBTA Communities Act.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so I think that's, I'm gonna just post my slide deck from the, the updates for the zoning, because I'm not interested in talking about zoning right now. At 9:37, it's like we're done here.
Yeah, just heads up that there is still no new draft for Waban, if zoning map. If people were wondering, we're expecting that in April at this point. Obviously, as you know, the committee gets behind schedule sometimes, and everyone's busy with the election and everything, so it just hasn't happened yet. But they're going to try to nail down all the definitions and things like that before they issue a new map, so that we're all on the same page about what we're actually looking at when there is a new map.
Okay, thank you.
So, I'm sorry, did you say the map will be available in April and not March?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but there is a ZAP meeting on Monday, and then there's going to be one on the following Monday. So I'm hoping that they'll be, they'll tell us whether or not it's April 3rd or it's April 27th or, whatever.
What I've been told is early April. So interpret that how you will, and we'll actually see if that actually happens.
April 2023 or 2020?
I was going to say, did they tell you what year?
Well, I think some of the counselors are starting to joke that they're going to be in the ground by the time this gets to any sort of a vote. And that may include me, and I'm, in my 30s. So anyway.
Okay.
Well, that's not good.
Yeah, who wants to keep having elections about this issue until the heat death of the universe and never actually resolve it?
It's been on the ballot ever since I moved here. Oh my God.
Yeah, but we didn't actually discuss zoning reform in the last election cycle. But let's not go there right now. All right, so I did mention the fact that we may or may not need to set up a hybrid format for our April meeting, just because it's whether or not they're going to extend the deadline. It's expiring on the 31st of March, so we need to think about being in a hybrid format.
Your working assumption should be that members should be planning on being there in person. The public can still attend by other means, but and the rules, if let's say that it all just expires, the rules that Newton has in place is that a majority of your members have to be in person in order to conduct the meeting. That's a pre-existing rule that actually predates the pandemic, but nobody ever used it before the pandemic. So that's the setup there. As long as so you may want to, if you're planning to be on vacation or you're going to be calling in sick or whatever, you might want to let your leadership team here know that you're not going to be there in person, because that might affect whether there's a quorum.
Quorum or not, yeah.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Bill. Jeremy, did you want to add to that? Or I bet Bill stole your thunder.
Well, I was just going to say that actually the Senate did pass their version today.
Oh, cool.
Great.
Okay,
So
all right,
it's
so
on the
we're
governor's desk.
extended.
It's not on the governor's desk yet because the House and the Senate are arguing about cocktails and whether those can be go.
That's the thing, right? They didn't agree on which, the rules were not in agreement between the two chambers. So that's why I'm saying err on the side of assuming that it's going to expire. You never know. It might. Previously, they sometimes let it accidentally expire and then get around to voting on it like 2 days after it's expired. So then you have to do like one meeting on one way. And then, we had that happen with the finance committee. We had to do an in-person meeting because they had let it expire for a week.
Yeah, absolutely. But they do agree on the March 31st, 2025 extension, which, by the way, to me is absolutely crazy that there could be a 5-year temporary extension of something. I think our representatives and senators need to work a little harder than that, but that's for another day.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Jeremy. All right, so I think what we'll do with the rest of our administrative items, we'll pick them up next at our next meeting. And I will have offline conversations about the fundraising. Okay, because we've got some really good ideas brewing. And I think we're in, I'm very excited about 2 of them. So I will reach out individually.
Yeah.
Okay.
Motion to end the meeting?
Yes, and thank you. Yes, and all of us in favor of that. And thank you, Sumak, for your presentation. And everybody that came out. I think this is great.
Thank
Oh,
you.
Mark, you're here too, and I'm so sorry we didn't get into zoning. Okay. All right, next time. Next time.
Thank you, everybody.
Next time.
Good
All right.
night.
All right. Good night.
Good night.
Okay.